You know exactly what you're supposed to do with your money. You've known for years. You know you should invest instead of spend. You know you should save instead of consume. You know the gap between where you are and where you could be. You know all of it. And yet, here you are, still spending the same way, still broke, still watching this video hoping that this time, finally, something will click. But it won't click, because you're not the problem. Your knowledge isn't the problem. The gap between what you know and what you do isn't a motivation problem. It's a mechanism, a specific psychological structure that keeps you exactly where you are. And understanding this mechanism changes nothing. Let me show you why. Every time you make a small, wasteful purchase, something happens in your brain. Your brain releases dopamine, not a little, enough to feel rewarded, enough to reinforce the behavior. But here's the thing, you already know this. You've read about it. You've watched videos about it. You understand dopamine. You understand that your brain rewards you for small purchases. You understand the entire neurochemical mechanism. And yet you still make the purchases. You still waste the money. You still stay exactly where you are. This is what nobody talks about. The fact that knowledge doesn't change behavior doesn't mean you need more knowledge. It means knowledge is almost irrelevant. You have all the information you need. The problem isn't that you don't understand. The problem is that understanding is comfortable. Understanding feels like progress. Understanding lets you feel intelligent and aware while doing absolutely nothing different. This is the first trap, the normalization trap. You've normalized the gap between what you know and what you do so completely that it's become invisible. You know you should save. You know you should invest. You know you should build wealth. But you also know that most people don't. You know that it's normal to struggle financially. You know that living paycheck to paycheck is just how most people live. And knowing that everyone else is doing it too makes it feel acceptable. This is the genius of human psychology. It doesn't just make you comfortable with failure. It makes failure feel normal. Makes poverty feel like a natural state. Makes the gap between your potential and your reality feel like just the way things are. Not a tragedy, just life. Think about your daily spending for a second. Not the big purchases, the small ones, the coffee, the food delivery, the impulse buys. You know these are wasteful. You know they're stealing from your future. You know that these small decisions compound into years of poverty, but you make them anyway. And you know why you make them? Because the immediate pleasure is real, and the future cost is abstract. Your brain didn't evolve to care about abstract future costs. Your brain cares about what feels good right now. And you know this too. You've read about time discounting and hyperbolic discounting, and all the psychological terms that describe why you make these decisions. You understand the mechanism perfectly, and you still make the purchases. Because understanding the mechanism doesn't change the mechanism. This is what most personal development misses. It assumes that if you understand why you're doing something, you'll stop doing it. But that's not how human psychology works. Understanding is just another layer of rationalization. It's another way to feel smart while staying broken. You can understand perfectly why you're poor and still be poor. You can understand perfectly why you're not executing and still not execute. In fact, understanding might make it worse, because now you have another excuse. Now you can tell yourself, I know why I'm doing this. I'm aware of the mechanism. That awareness itself feels like progress. It feels like you're dealing with the problem, but you're not. You're just adding another layer of comfortable understanding on top of your comfortable failure. Here's what's actually happening. You've built an entire identity around being someone who knows things, someone who understands complex psychological concepts, someone who's aware of their own patterns. This identity is comfortable. This identity doesn't require you to change anything. You can maintain this identity perfectly while staying exactly as broken as you are. You can read another book about financial psychology. You can watch another video about behavioral economics. You can understand more and more about why you fail, and your life stays exactly the same. The gap stays exactly the same. Your bank account stays exactly the same. This is the real addiction. Not dopamine from small purchases. The addiction to understanding while doing nothing. the addiction to knowledge as a substitute for change, the addiction to self-awareness as a replacement for self-discipline. The truly dark part is that you feel good about this addiction. You feel intelligent. You feel like you're taking action by consuming information. You feel like you're progressing, and you're not progressing at all. You're just getting better at rationalizing your failure with increasingly sophisticated psychological frameworks. Most people will never escape this, because escaping requires something much harder than understanding. It requires admitting that your understanding is worthless. It requires admitting that all your knowledge has changed nothing. It requires accepting that you've been using intelligence as an excuse for inaction. It requires that you stop feeling smart and start feeling ashamed. And shame is uncomfortable. Shame is painful. There are people who've escaped, though, not through more understanding, not through better knowledge. They escaped by doing something radically different. They interrupted the cycle before their brain could defend it. They built a different kind of structure, one where the gap doesn't exist because execution became automatic, because identity shifted, because the system itself changed. Not through willpower, through design, through ritual, through something that forces new behavior faster than rationalization can catch up. Most people won't even look for this, because looking for it would mean admitting that understanding alone isn't enough, that your current approach has failed, that you need something external to break the pattern. There's something in the description, a specific protocol, not a course, not another book, a walkthrough of exactly how people rebuild this part of themselves, how they interrupt the mechanism, how they make execution automatic instead of optional, how they stop being addicted to understanding and start being addicted to execution. Most of the people watching this won't click it. Your brain will create a reason why you don't need it right now. That's the mechanism protecting itself. That's the system defending against change. So instead, people keep consuming information. They keep learning. They keep understanding. They keep feeling like they're working on the problem, while the problem stays exactly the same. The worst part is that you can see this in other people perfectly. You can watch a friend or family member know exactly what they should do financially and not do it. You can see them make the same mistakes repeatedly. You can see them use knowledge as an excuse for inaction, and you judge them for it. You think, why don't they just change? Why don't they just execute? Why do they keep talking about what they should do instead of actually doing it? But then you make the exact same choices. You know exactly what you should do. You have the knowledge. You have the understanding. You have the awareness. You still don't do it. And instead of admitting that the problem is deeper than knowledge, instead of admitting that you're trapped in a psychological structure that knowledge can't penetrate, you look for more knowledge. You assume that if you just understand one more thing, finally you'll be able to change. But you won't, because the problem was never understanding. The problem was always that you don't actually want to change. Not really, because change is hard. Change is uncomfortable. Change requires you to become someone different. Change requires you to value your future self more than your present comfort. And most people aren't willing to do that. So they stay. They consume information. They understand the mechanisms. They feel intelligent and aware, and nothing changes. This is what happens in the majority of minds when they face the gap between what they know and what they do. They fill the gap with more understanding. They build a sophisticated psychological justification for why they can't change. They normalize the failure so completely that it stops feeling like failure. It just feels like life, like how things are, like how everyone lives. And in that normalization, the gap disappears. Not because it's been closed, but because it's been forgotten, because it now feels natural. This is the trap that captures most people. Not ignorance, knowledge. Not lack of awareness, awareness. The trap is being intelligent enough to understand your own failure and comfortable enough in that understanding to never actually address it. You could spend the rest of your life learning about behavioral economics and psychology and neuroscience. You could become an expert in why people make bad financial decisions. You could understand the entire landscape of human cognitive biases and behavioral patterns, and you would still be poor because you've confused understanding with change. You've confused awareness with progress. You've confused knowledge with action, and that confusion is profitable for everyone except you. It's profitable for the people selling you courses and books and videos about financial psychology. It's profitable for the system that keeps you trapped in the gap between knowing and doing. Because as long as you keep consuming information, As long as you keep understanding more deeply, as long as you keep feeling intelligent about your failure, you won't actually do anything to change it. You'll just stay in the gap. Getting more sophisticated at understanding why you're in the gap. Getting better at rationalizing the gap. Getting more comfortable with the gap until the gap becomes your entire life. And that's when most people realize, too late, that they wasted decades trying to understand their way out of a problem that understanding could never solve. But by then, the gap isn't something to close. It's something to live with. It's something to normalize completely. It's something to tell your kids about. This is just how life works. This is just how most people are. And the cycle continues. Because your children will grow up and they'll learn all the same things you learned. They'll understand all the mechanisms. They'll know exactly why people stay poor, and they'll do exactly the same things you did. They'll consume information instead of executing. They'll understand instead of acting. They'll fill the gap with knowledge instead of closing it with change. And the gap will remain exactly the same across generations. Unexamined, normalized, comfortable. That's what's actually happening when you watch videos like this. That's the mechanism at work, and you know it. You can feel it. You know that this video is just another piece of information, another thing to understand, another way to feel like you're dealing with the problem without actually dealing with it. And yet you'll probably still be here at the end. You'll probably still be watching, because watching feels like doing, consuming feels like acting, understanding feels like progress, and the gap will remain exactly the same.